There comes a moment silent, invisible, when a person decides they are no longer willing to be ruled by their own weakness. That moment does not arrive with noise. It doesn't come with applause or lightning. It comes in stillness, in quiet rebellion, a flicker of will that dares to say, I will no longer be a slave to myself. You see, the world speaks often of freedom, freedom to speak, to choose, to move, to live. But the cruelest irony is that most are prisoners within, trapped by habits, shackled by fear, enslaved by comfort, and they don't even see the chains. True freedom is not found in escaping rules. It is born in obedience not to others, but to your higher self, the disciplined self, the self that rises when the alarm screams in the darkness, the self that stands up when the body cries for rest. The self that answers the question, who am I really, with action, not noise. Discipline is not punishment. It is liberation in its rawest, most primal form. Because the undisciplined man is not free, he is controlled by cravings, dictated by impulses, steered by shadows. He is a puppet to convenience. But the disciplined man, the one who tames his own fire, he walks with a strange kind of peace, a quiet, thunderous certainty. Do not mistake this path for ease. It is not ease that births greatness. It is not softness that awakens the soul. The seed does not grow in comfort. The sword does not shine without fire. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before he gave the world light. Andrew Carnegie built an empire from nothing, not because he was handed privilege, but because he was disciplined enough to climb, stone by stone, with no ladder. Disney was told he lacked imagination. Lincoln faced defeat after defeat, but they endured, not because they were superhuman, but because they refused to be ruled by momentary doubt. They were disciplined enough to believe in something deeper than the present pain. And so I ask you, what rules you? Is it your hunger for more or your fear of failing? Is it your commitment or your craving for distraction? Who commands you when nobody watches? Because that's where discipline lives, not in the public eye, but in the silence. When it's cold, when you're tired, when nothing is working, and still you choose to show up. You see, belief is the seed, but discipline is the water. Clarity is the map, but discipline is the march. Purpose is the flame, but discipline is the fuel that keeps it burning long after the thrill is gone. And belief, real belief, is not loud. It does not shout its arrival. It is silent conviction. It is saying, I will become, long before the world agrees. It is the audacity to act when results do not exist yet. But belief alone is not enough. The mind must be trained, just like the body. Like a blade in a forge, it must be shaped, tested, bent, and hardened. Because the world will test you, it will not ask for your dreams gently. It will demand a price, and that price is your discipline. Do not envy those who succeed. Study them, trace their footsteps. You will find the same thing again and again. Discipline, like a shadow, following them through every chapter. They do not wait for motivation. They move with ritual. They rise when others rest. They train when others talk. They act when others stall. They have turned discipline into a lifestyle, and freedom is their reward. This is not sacrifice. This is alignment. This is the shedding of false freedoms, so the true self can breathe. And yet so many resist. They see discipline as restriction. But what is more restrictive than addiction, than regret, than waking up year after year in a life you didn't choose, simply because you lacked the courage to lead yourself? The world wants to sell you comfort, but comfort is a drug, and like any drug, it gives you a high, followed by a crash. It steals from your future. It masks your power, and it keeps you numb, and you were not born to be numb. You were born to awaken. Clarity is the next blade in the hand of the warrior. The disciplined man sees clearly not because he has all the answers, but because he has removed the noise. He has simplified the battlefield. He knows what matters, he knows who he is, and more importantly, he knows who he is not. A man without clarity will chase everything and catch nothing. but a man with clarity, he becomes unstoppable. Because every action is aligned, every step has weight, he is not scattered. He is not chasing shiny illusions, he is focused like a lion, like a monk, like a force of nature that cannot be distracted. And clarity does not come from sitting in thought. It comes from walking through the fire. It comes from doing, from failing, from course correcting, from refining your direction through discipline, not daydream. You don't find your purpose. You build it through action, through repetition, through rising again and again until your life becomes a mirror of your deepest values. There is no arrival. There is no peak. There is only the next level of mastery. And mastery is married to discipline. You cannot separate the two. The artist, the monk, the entrepreneur, the athlete all live in different worlds, but they are brothers in spirit. Bound by the same code, do the work even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because pain is not the enemy. Pain is the compass, the signal that you're on the edge of growth, and the edge is where warriors are born. Pain is the teacher that comfort hides. It shows you where you're still soft, where you're still uncertain, where the work must go, and yet most will run from it. They'll numb it, avoid it, medicate it. But the disciplined one, he listens, he studies it, he learns its language, because he understands. Pain is not there to break you, it's there to reveal you. When a blacksmith hammers steel, he is not destroying it, he is crafting it. When a monk sits in silence for hours, he is not wasting time, he is conquering himself. When a man sacrifices temporary pleasure for long-term purpose, he is not suffering, he is stepping into greatness. And this is where vision enters. Vision is not fantasy, it is not an escape. It is not a pretty picture you whisper to yourself when things feel impossible. Vision is fire. It is the inner command that says, this is who I must become, even if no one believes, even if no one claps, even if I must bleed for it. Vision is not soft, it is brutal, demanding, precise. It does not tolerate excuses. It is a contract with the future, signed in the present, paid for in discipline. If you cannot see where you are going, you will be ruled by where you are. The past will haunt you, the present will seduce you, and the future will remain a ghost. But when your vision is clear, when it lives in your bones, no storm can stop you. You will walk through the rain and fire and darkness because you are not just moving for success. You are moving for something sacred, and that sacred thing is purpose. Purpose is the reason you wake up when it's easier to sleep. It's the roar inside your silence, the code in your blood that says, I was not made for mediocrity. It is not always loud, but it is unshakable. Purpose doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It is its own reward. The disciplined man lives by purpose, not emotion, not environment, not reaction. He does what must be done whether he feels like it or not. Because his life is no longer guided by moods, it is guided by mission. Discipline demands that you show up when it's boring, when it's cold, when it's unrewarding, because it's not about the feeling. It's about the becoming, and every repetition, every decision, every sacrifice, it's carving something unbreakable in you. And once that is forged, you become unstoppable. You no longer need permission. You don't wait for opportunity, you create it. You move with intention, you speak with fire, you lead with presence. And yet, here's what most will never understand. True discipline is not rigid, it is not stiffness. It is not being robotic, it is awareness, it is flow. It is the ability to bend without breaking, to adjust without losing center. The most disciplined people are not just strong, they are adaptive. Fluid, ready, because the road is never straight. Life is not linear, the plan will be tested, the map will change, and if your discipline is only built on routine, it will crack under pressure. But if it's built on identity, if it's who you are, not just what you do, you will adapt and overcome, and that brings us to resilience. Resilience is the echo of discipline. It is what remains when everything else is stripped away. When your vision is blurred, when your purpose is questioned, when your plans collapse, resilience says, "Still I rise." It is not glamour, it is not inspiration, it is grit in the mud, it is bleeding and standing. It is failing publicly and choosing to return stronger. It is what separates the dreamers from the warriors, and the resilient are not fearless. They simply act in spite of fear. They are not free from doubt. They are free from obedience to doubt. Lincoln, ridiculed and rejected, still ran for president. Ford, bankrupt and dismissed, still built an empire. They didn't avoid the fall, they mastered the climb. Not because they were invincible, but because they were disciplined enough to rise again. And at the heart of this all is learning. A disciplined mind is a learning mind, not a fixed one, not a prideful one. A mind that absorbs, that observes, that studies itself ruthlessly and humbly. The moment you stop learning, your discipline becomes dead weight. It turns to arrogance, to delusion. But if you keep learning, refining, evolving, then your discipline becomes a living force, a sharpening edge. And this is the paradox. The stronger you become, the softer your ego must grow. The more skilled you are, the more open you must stay, because mastery is not a destination. It is a discipline of forever becoming. And when you begin to truly live this way, when every act is a reflection of your deepest values, when every day becomes a ritual of alignment, something incredible happens. Gratitude appears. Not the kind of gratitude you post online. Not the kind you fake to look wise. Real gratitude, quiet, deep, lived. You begin to realize the grind was the gift, the struggle the teacher, the path the purpose, every early morning, every lonely night. Every failed attempt, every ounce of sweat and silence that shaped you. You no longer need praise, you no longer need proof you are free, because you are disciplined enough to choose your path and grateful enough to walk it. And this is true freedom, not the freedom to indulge, but the freedom to build, not the freedom to escape discipline, but the freedom earned through it. Freedom is not given, it is forged in silence. In sweat, in solitude, you become free when you are no longer bound by the weaker version of yourself. And that version, he still exists. He will always whisper. He will always offer you the exit, the shortcut, the excuse. But now you know better. You have felt the fire. You have answered the call. You have chosen the narrow road, the road of discipline. And that road leads only to one place, mastery. Mastery is not a crown you wear. It's not an achievement you frame. It's not the applause you collect or the titles you earn. Mastery is quiet. It lives in the breath before the first move, in the repetition no one sees, in the choices that align with values when there's no one there to clap for you. Mastery is discipline embodied when who you are, what you do, and why you do it become one, and you know you've touched it not when everything gets easier, but when the difficult becomes normal. When sacrifice is not suffering, but a sacred rhythm, when routine becomes ritual, when there is no longer a war between what you want now and what you want most, because that war is what destroys most people. They choose the short win, the shallow dopamine, the path of least resistance. They hand their future to comfort and call it balance. But balance is not avoiding challenge, it's being strong enough to carry both the weight of discipline and the grace of patience. The undisciplined man is constantly negotiating with himself. He says just this once, until it becomes every time. He says tomorrow, until tomorrow becomes never. He dreams of freedom, but lives in chains built by every excuse he's ever justified. But the disciplined man, he needs no negotiation. He has made a vow, not to perfection but to progression, not to a mood but to a mission, not to comfort but to the code, and that code is carved from ancient truths that outlast culture, trends, and noise. The samurai rose before the sun, sharpening the sword and the mind alike. The Stoics journaled through storms of war and politics. The Shaolin monk sat in silence, mastering not only the body, but the breath, the thought, the heartbeat. They all knew freedom is not the absence of rules, it is the presence of self-rule, and that is where real power begins, not when the world bows to you, but when you bow to your own highest standard. When you stop chasing identity and start embodying it, that's when something rare happens. Your presence begins to speak louder than your words. People feel it, not because you are loud, but because you are anchored. Grounded, intentional, clean in energy, clear in action. You begin to move differently, think differently, lead differently, because now your life is not a reaction, it is a declaration. A declaration that says, I am not ruled by fear. I am not a servant to comfort. I do not need easy to choose excellent. I do not wait for the right moment, I become it. I do not need the world to believe in me. I believe so fiercely, the world adjusts. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is the stillness of a warrior who has trained long enough to no longer need to prove, only to live. And this is the ultimate power of discipline. It reveals you, it refines you. And eventually it replaces you. The weaker self, the lesser self, the scattered, reactive, fragile self dies, and in its place rises someone forged, someone focused, someone free. Not because they never fall, but because they no longer stay down. Not because they have no doubt, but because they are no longer owned by it. Not because life has gotten easier, but because they have gotten sharper. Discipline has given them a weapon stronger than talent, louder than words, deeper than motivation, identity. And this is what you must understand. You don't try a discipline, you don't test it like a pair of shoes. You become it, you live it, you bleed it. You don't wait for the moment. You create it day by day, act by act, failure by failure, until you've built a life so aligned, so sharp, so forged, that the world can no longer deny what you've become. Because this path, the path of discipline, is not glamorous. It is not for everyone, but it is for the few who are tired of their own lies, the few who are no longer entertained by their own limitations, the few who would rather be exhausted from effort than comforted by regret. It's for the one who looks in the mirror and says, I know I'm not there yet, but I am not who I was, and I will not stop, not now, not ever. Because now you understand, discipline is not about controlling life. It's about mastering the only thing you were ever meant to command yourself. And once that happens, the game changes. You no longer fear the unknown, you walk into it with your chin high. You no longer wait for certainty, you move with faith. You no longer shrink from challenge, you lean into it with breath and blade and presence. Because you know, every challenge is a call, every struggle is a ceremony, every sacrifice a sacred offering to your future self. You begin to see life not as a burden, but as a training ground, every hour a lesson, every failure a forge, every discipline a declaration of your freedom. And when that becomes your reality, when the code lives inside you, something incredible happens. You don't just change your habits. You don't just change your results. You change your atmosphere. Your presence becomes a message. Your energy becomes an invitation. Your life becomes a mirror showing others what is possible when you stop making excuses and start making yourself. And that is the quiet revolution of the disciplined. They don't need the world to notice. They don't need the stage. They don't need to be seen, because they already see themselves, and that is the greatest freedom of all. So rise not once, but endlessly. Not until it's done, but until you are reborn. Step into the fire and come out forged. Leave the code, own the path. Walk like one who has already paid the price, because you have. Discipline is the gateway to freedom. And freedom was always meant to be earned.